Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the crystalline chamber, her hands steady despite the weight of humanity's future resting on her shoulders. Around her, the 12 members of the Galactic Council floated in their bio-suspension pods, their alien forms barely visible through the shimmering energy fields. Each pod represented a different species, each more ancient and supposedly more advanced than the last. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering that Earth's scientists could barely comprehend. Walls made of living crystal hummed with energy, translating not just words but thoughts and emotions between the various species. The floor beneath Sarah's feet felt warm, almost alive, responding to her heartbeat with subtle pulses of bioluminescent light. Human representative, the voice of Council Speaker ZX Thara, echoed through the translation matrix, its mechanical tone stripping away any warmth that might have existed in the original void tongue speech. Your species has submitted a petition for membership in the Galactic Council. We have reviewed your documentation. Sarah nodded respectfully, though she noticed how the speaker had paused before saying documentation, as if the word itself was distasteful. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, learning the customs and protocols of 12 different alien civilizations, mastering the art of diplomatic discourse that had evolved over millennia among the stars. Honored Council, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation system. Humanity comes before you with deep respect and genuine desire to contribute to the galactic community. We offer our unique perspectives, our innovation, and our commitment to peace and cooperation. A low rumble emanated from one of the pods, the Krex delegate, if Sarah remembered correctly. The translation matrix rendered it as dismissive laughter, though the sound itself sent an uncomfortable vibration through her bones. Council member Veltar of the hegemony spoke next, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension that transcended species barriers. Your species discovered faster than light travel merely 50 standard cycles ago. Most civilizations require at least 500 cycles of interstellar experience before they are considered mature enough for council membership. With respect, honored Veltar, Sarah replied, maintaining her diplomatic composure. The speed of our technological advancement demonstrates our adaptability and potential for growth. In just 5 decades, we have established peaceful contact with 17 different species and have consistently honored all treaties and agreements. Yes, interjected Quindala of the Synthesis, her telepathic communication translated as cool, analytical text flowing across Sarah's visual implant. You have been, notably, aggressive in your expansion. Most concerning. Sarah felt a flicker of frustration but kept it from her expression. If I may clarify, honored Quindala, human expansion has been exclusively peaceful. We have not colonized a single world that was already inhabited. And we have consistently offered aid and resources to struggling civilizations we have encountered. Which brings us to the core issue, Speaker Zeke's Thara intoned, and Sarah could sense the gravity in the translation even through the mechanical delivery. Your species displays an alarming tendency toward intervention. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah had been expecting this, but hearing it stated so bluntly still hit her like a physical blow. She thought of the Kyrian refugee crisis, where human ships had evacuated millions from a dying world, while other council races debated jurisdiction for months. She remembered the Yolax plague, where human medical teams had worked around the clock to develop treatments, while established galactic powers argued about patent rights. The council values stability above all else, continued Veltar. Your species demonstrates a disturbing pattern of disrupting established order, even when such disruption leads to what you might consider positive outcomes. Sarah's training kicked in, and she straightened her shoulders. Honored Council, every intervention humanity has undertaken has been in response to direct requests for assistance or in situations where immediate action was required to preserve life. We have never acted against the wishes of sovereign governments or ignored established protocols without clear moral imperative. Moral imperative, repeated Krex Moore with another of those bone-rattling sounds that the translator rendered as bitter amusement. How wonderfully primitive. The galaxy operates on laws. Human Sarah Chen, not on the shifting sands of individual moral judgment. The Thorian border incident, Quindala stated, and Sarah's heart sank. She had hoped that particular situation wouldn't come up. But she should have known better. Your species violated a peace treaty that had maintained stability for over 2,000 cycles. Sarah took a deep breath. The Thorian situation was complicated, and she knew that no matter how she explained it, the Council would interpret it through their own lens of established order and ancient protocols. Honored Council, the Thorian Accords specifically prohibited military vessels from entering disputed space. When we detected slave ships transporting abducted civilians through that region, we sent medical and rescue vessels, not military ones. The treaty violation accusation was later withdrawn when the Thorian government itself acknowledged that the slave traders were operating without their knowledge or consent. Yet your ships were armed, Veltar pointed out, and you engaged in combat operations. Our rescue vessels carry defensive armaments because space is dangerous, Sarah replied firmly. We engaged slave ships that fired upon us first, while we were attempting to provide medical aid to victims. The Thorian government later commended our actions and requested our assistance in tracking down the remaining slave trading rings. Irrelevant, Zixthara pronounced with finality. The point remains that your species consistently chooses action over patience, intervention over protocol. This demonstrates a fundamental incompatibility with Council governance. Sarah felt the weight of humanity's hopes and dreams pressing down on her. Behind this cold diplomatic exchange was the future of her entire species. Membership in the Galactic Council meant access to technologies that could revolutionize human civilization, trade networks that could ensure prosperity for billions, and protection under the mutual defense agreements that had kept the galaxy relatively peaceful for millennia. Honored Council, she said, putting every ounce of her diplomatic training into her words. I would respectfully submit that humanity's willingness to act when others hesitate is not a flaw, but a strength. The galaxy faces challenges that require more than ancient protocols and established procedures. Such as? Quindala inquired, her mental voice carrying a note of academic curiosity. Sarah seized the opening. The void storm phenomena that have been increasing in frequency over the past century. The systematic failures in the outer rim trade networks, the concerning reports from deep space exploration vessels about anomalies that don't match any known natural phenomena. A silence fell over the chamber that was somehow more unsettling than the previous tensions. Sarah realized she had touched on something the Council didn't want discussed openly. Through her peripheral vision, she caught brief energy fluctuations in several pods, the alien equivalent of nervous glances. These matters, Speaker Zixthara said slowly, are under investigation by appropriate Council committees. They do not concern species outside the Council framework, but they should, Sarah pressed, sensing she had found something important. If these anomalies represent a threat to galactic civilization, shouldn't all advanced species be working together to understand and address them? Humanity's fresh perspective and innovative approaches could be valuable in finding solutions. AD, RD, R80, ADR. Your arrogance is astounding, Veltar snapped, his translator struggling to convey the venom in his words. You assume that because your species has mastered basic space travel and shown a talent for military efficiency, that you could contribute meaningfully to problems that have puzzled civilizations far older and wiser than yours. I assume nothing, Sarah replied, her diplomatic mask finally slipping slightly to reveal the steel underneath. I simply observe that problems that have persisted for centuries, while being handled by the same approaches, might benefit from new methodologies. Enough, Zixthara declared. This council has made its decision. Humanity's petition for membership is denied. Furthermore, Earth's expansion beyond your current territorial limits is restricted pending a period of maturation. You will confine your activities to the 17 star systems you currently occupy and will cease all intervention in galactic affairs outside your designated space. Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a rejection. It was a quarantine. Honored Council. Surely such restrictions are unnecessarily harsh. Humanity has committed no crimes, violated no laws. The decision is final, Veltar interrupted. Your species will be reconsidered for membership in approximately 500 standard cycles, provided you demonstrate the patience and respect for established order that this council requires. 500 years. Sarah did the mental calculation quickly. Even with human longevity treatments, this was effectively telling her entire generation that they would never see humanity take its place among the stars. Their children's children's children might have a chance, but only if they learned to be passive and obedient in the way the council demanded. There is one final matter, Quindala announced, her mental voice carrying an odd tone that the translator couldn't quite render. Earth's technological development will be monitored. Certain advances that might be considered destabilizing to galactic order are to be discouraged. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. What kind of advances? Military applications beyond current parameters. Zeke's Thera explained. Certain forms of artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing technologies that might disrupt established trade networks. The details will be provided to your government in due course. It was all Sarah could do to maintain her composure. They weren't just rejecting humanity, they were deliberately stunting human development to ensure they would never become a threat to the established order. The council was treating her species like children who couldn't be trusted with dangerous toys. I must protest, she began. Your protest is noted and dismissed. The speaker cut her off. This audience is concluded. You will return to Earth and inform your government of the council's decision. Transport to the edge of council space has been arranged for your vessel. The biosuspension pods began to dim, their occupants retreating into whatever meditative states allowed them to govern a galaxy of trillions. Sarah stood alone in the vast chamber, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. As she walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the crystalline space, Sarah's mind raced. The council's decision wasn't just short-sighted, it was actively hostile. They weren't just saying humanity wasn't ready. They were ensuring humanity would never be ready by crippling their technological advancement. The transport back to her ship was a blur of alien architecture and hostile stares from the various species that staffed the council station. By the time she reached her modest human vessel, docked in what was clearly the least prestigious section of the facility, Sarah had made several important decisions. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, was waiting for her in the ship's small briefing room. One look at her face told him everything he needed to know about how the meeting had gone. That bad? He asked quietly. Worse. Sarah sank into her chair and began composing her report to Earth in her mind. But alongside the official diplomatic language she would use to convey the council's decision, another part of her brain was working on something else entirely. They didn't just reject us, James. They're planning to keep us contained and controlled. 500-year waiting period, technological restrictions, territorial limits. They're treating us like a threat that needs to be managed. Rodriguez leaned forward. What are you thinking, Ambassador? Sarah looked out the small viewport at the massive council station, its alien geometries spanning kilometers in every direction, representing the accumulated power and knowledge of 12 ancient civilizations. I'm thinking they've made a very serious mistake. How so? They think that by cutting us off from their technology and their networks, they're keeping us weak and dependent. But they've actually done something much more dangerous. Sarah's expression hardened. They've told humanity that we're on our own, and historically speaking, Lieutenant Commander, that's when my species does its best work. As their ship detached from the station and began its journey back toward Earth, Sarah composed 2 messages. The first was her official diplomatic report, carefully worded to avoid causing panic, while accurately conveying the Council's decision and its implications. The second message was encrypted and directed to a very specific group within Earth's government, the people who had been quietly preparing for the possibility that humanity's first contact with galactic civilization might not go as hoped. Sarah had no doubt that the Council's monitoring systems would detect the existence of the encrypted message, but she was equally confident they wouldn't be able to decode it. Human cryptography had developed along completely different lines from galactic standard systems, and that difference was about to become very important. In her official message, Ambassador Sarah Chen informed Earth's leaders that humanity's petition to join the Galactic Council had been rejected. and that significant restrictions had been placed on human expansion and technological development. In her encrypted message, she told them something much more significant. The galactic powers had just declared war on humanity's future. They simply hadn't realized it yet. The journey back to Earth would take 3 weeks, even with their fastest drive systems. 3 weeks for humanity to process the news and decide how to respond. Sarah suspected she knew exactly what that response would be. And despite the diplomatic disaster she was bringing home, she found herself smiling. The Council thought they had contained a problem. Instead, they had just given humanity something they had always thrived on. A seemingly impossible challenge and the motivation to overcome it. In trying to keep humanity weak and dependent, the ancient powers of the galaxy had forgotten one crucial fact about human nature. Humans had never been very good at accepting the word no. The emergency session of the United Earth Council had been going for 16 hours, and Dr. Elena Vasquez could feel the tension in the underground bunker like a physical weight. Representatives from every major nation and colony sat around the curved table, their faces illuminated by holographic displays showing the full scope of what the Galactic Council's restrictions meant for humanity. "They want to limit our manufacturing capabilities," reported Director Kim of the Pacific Alliance, his voice tight with controlled anger. "According to their technical specifications, we're supposed to cap our automated production at levels that would barely support our current population, let alone any growth. The AI restrictions are even worse," added Dr. Sarah Okonkwo from the African Federation's Institute of Technology. "They're essentially demanding we lobotomize every artificial intelligence system above what they consider acceptable parameters. That means no more advanced research assistants, no more predictive modeling systems, no more adaptive manufacturing controls." General Morrison from the North American Defense Council leaned forward, his weathered face grim. "The military restrictions are designed to keep us helpless. No weapons development beyond kinetic projectiles. No defensive systems that might interfere with their monitoring protocols. No ship designs that exceed their arbitrary speed and maneuverability limits." Elena looked around the table at faces that reflected her own mixture of outrage and determination. As Earth's Director of Advanced Research, she had spent the last 3 weeks since Ambassador Chen's return analyzing every detail of the Council's restrictions. The picture they painted was clear. The galactic powers weren't interested in eventually welcoming humanity as equals. They wanted permanent vassals. "There's something else," Elena said, activating her personal display. "I've been analyzing the economic projections if we comply with all their restrictions. Within 50 years, our technological advancement would effectively halt. Within 100 years, we'd become completely dependent on galactic technology imports for basic infrastructure maintenance." President Martinez of the South American Union shook her head slowly. "They're not just rejecting us. They're systematically destroying our independence. Which brings us to the real question," said Prime Minister Chen of the Asian Cooperative. "What are we going to do about it?" The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Everyone in the room understood what was being discussed without anyone saying it directly. The Galactic Council's monitoring systems were sophisticated, but the bunker they were meeting in had been designed specifically for this possibility, shielded against every known form of surveillance that human science could detect or imagine. Elena stood, her slight frame somehow commanding the attention of the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been working with a team of specialists from every major research institution on Earth. What I'm about to show you violates approximately 47 different clauses of the Council's restriction protocols." She activated the room's main display, and a complex schematic appeared, something that looked like it had been designed by someone who had taken conventional spacecraft engineering and completely reimagined it from the ground up. "Meet Project Prometheus," Elena said simply. Director Kim studied the display, his eyes widening as he recognized the implications of what he was seeing. Are you using quantum entanglement for faster-than-light communication?" "Among other things," Elena confirmed. "The Council's FTL technology relies on manipulating space-time through dimensional fold generators. It's elegant, efficient, and completely detectable by their monitoring networks. So, we went in a different direction." General Morrison leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You found a way to hide from their sensors." "We found several ways," Elena corrected. Quantum entanglement communication that operates on principles their monitoring systems can't detect. Stealth technology based on metamaterial science they haven't developed. And most importantly, a manufacturing approach that makes their restrictions completely meaningless. She gestured, and the display shifted to show what looked like a simple metallic sphere about the size of a basketball. Self-replicating universal constructors, Elena explained. We call them seeds. Each one contains the complete technological and manufacturing knowledge of human civilization, along with the ability to replicate itself and build anything from a simple tool to a complete industrial complex. President Martinez frowned. That sounds like exactly the kind of artificial intelligence they want to ban. Technically, it's not artificial intelligence, Elena said with a slight smile. It's more like crystallized human intelligence. Each seed contains quantum-encoded memories from our best engineers, scientists, and craftspeople. They don't think they remember. And since the Council's AI restrictions specifically target thinking machines, not memory storage systems, they fall outside the prohibited categories. Clever, Prime Minister Chen murmured. How long until they figure out what we're really doing? That depends on how smart we are about it, Elena replied. The seeds are designed to look like standard automated manufacturing equipment. They'll comply with all monitoring protocols and produce exactly what they're supposed to according to their programming. The Council's observers will see us building permitted technologies at permitted rates. But, Director Kim prompted, but each seed has a secondary function that only activates when it receives specific quantum-encrypted commands. At that point, it begins producing advanced technologies, using materials and methods the monitoring systems can't track. Elena's expression grew serious. In 18 months, we could have a secret industrial infrastructure capable of supporting technologies decades ahead of anything the Council restricts us to. General Morrison studied the schematics more carefully. What about raw materials? If we're building advanced systems, we'll need exotic elements that might be noticed missing from our supply chains. Elena smiled. The seeds can transmute elements at the subatomic level. Give them common carbon, and they can output anything on the periodic table. The Council's monitoring is designed to track imports and exports of finished goods, not track individual atoms. This is brilliant, President Martinez said slowly. But it's also incredibly dangerous. If they catch us, they'll do what? Elena interrupted. Impose more restrictions? They've already made it clear that they consider us a threat to be controlled, not potential allies. The only question is whether we accept that judgment or prove them right to fear us. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. There's another consideration. The ambassador's report mentioned some kind of galactic threats the Council doesn't want to discuss. Void storms, system failures, deep space anomalies. If they're facing problems they can't solve with their ancient technologies and established procedures, then humanity's different approach might be exactly what's needed, Elena finished. But they'll never give us the chance to help as long as they see us as primitives to be managed. Prime Minister Chen was studying the technical specifications, his expression growing more impressed by the minute. How many people know about this project? Currently, about 300 of our best scientists and engineers, all working on different pieces without knowing the full scope, Elena replied. But if we proceed, we'll need to expand that carefully. The beauty of the seeds is that once we have them deployed, most of the work happens automatically. What about timing? General Morrison asked. How long before we have real capabilities? Elena manipulated the display to show a timeline. 6 months to complete the first-generation seeds and begin covert deployment. 12 months to establish our hidden industrial base. 18 months to begin producing technologies that exceed anything currently known to galactic civilization. 2 years to achieve effective technological independence. And then? President Martinez asked quietly. Then we face the real decision, Elena said. Do we reveal ourselves and demand recognition as equals? Do we work behind the scenes to help solve the galactic problems the Council is struggling with? Or do we simply exceed their capabilities so dramatically that their restrictions become meaningless? Director Kim was reviewing economic projections on his personal display. The resource commitment for this would be enormous. We'd essentially be building a parallel technological civilization while maintaining the facade of compliance with their restrictions. The cost of not doing it is higher, Elena pointed out. Compliance means the slow death of human advancement. The Council has made it clear that they intend to keep us as a contained and controlled species indefinitely. There's another factor, Dr. Okonkwo added. If we succeed, we won't just be developing technology in isolation. The quantum communication systems mean we could coordinate across all human colonies and ships in real time, regardless of distance. We'd become the first truly unified interstellar civilization. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. What Elena was proposing wasn't just technological development, it was the transformation of humanity into something unprecedented in galactic history. There are risks, Elena continued honestly. If the Council detects what we're doing before we're ready, they could impose military sanctions. If we move too fast, we could trigger responses we're not prepared for. And if we succeed too well, we might find ourselves facing not just Council restrictions, but active hostility from 12 ancient civilizations. On the other hand, General Morrison said thoughtfully, if those deep space anomalies the ambassador mentioned represent a real threat to galactic civilization, and the Council's traditional approaches aren't working, then humanity's survival might depend on our ability to develop solutions they can't, Elena agreed. The Council fears our tendency toward intervention and rapid innovation. But those same qualities might be exactly what the galaxy needs. President Martinez looked around the table at the other leaders. We all understand what we're discussing here. This isn't just about responding to the Council's restrictions, it's about fundamentally changing humanity's place in the galaxy. Are we prepared for the consequences of success? Are we prepared for the consequences of failure? Prime Minister Chen countered. Because accepting the Council's restrictions guarantees failure. We'd be condemning future generations to permanent second-class status in a galaxy where they could be leaders. Elena called up one final display, a star map showing human settlements scattered across 17 star systems, tiny islands of life in the vast ocean of galactic space. For the past 50 years, we've been trying to find our place in galactic civilization by fitting into their existing structures. The Council has made it clear that there is no place for us in those structures, so we need to build our own. The vote, President Martinez said formally, is whether to authorize Project Prometheus and begin covert development of advanced technologies in violation of Galactic Council restrictions. All in favor? The hands went up one by one, slowly at first, then with growing conviction, until every leader in the room had voted to approve what was arguably the most significant decision in human history. Elena felt a strange mixture of excitement and trepidation as she looked around the table. In 3 weeks, humanity had gone from hoping for acceptance in the galactic community to planning its own technological revolution. The Council had intended to keep humans contained and controlled, but instead they had given them the motivation to become something unprecedented. How soon can we begin deployment? General Morrison asked. The first seeds are already being manufactured, Elena admitted, drawing surprised looks from several Council members. I've been using my research authority to build prototypes under the guise of compliance testing. We can begin covert installation within the next 36 hours. Dr. Okonkwo smiled. You were pretty confident about this vote. I was confident that humanity wouldn't accept defeat. Elena corrected. The Council made their biggest mistake when they assumed we would simply comply with restrictions designed to keep us weak. They forgot that humans have a long history of thriving under restrictions, whether they come from hostile environments, limited resources, or oppressive governments. As the meeting broke up and the leaders prepared to return to their respective territories with carefully crafted cover stories, Elena remained behind to review the final implementation plans. The quantum communication network would need to be the first priority. Once they could coordinate instantly across interstellar distances, the rest would follow. She thought about Ambassador Chen's final message, the one that had been encrypted beyond any Council ability to decode. The diplomatic rejection had been painful, but the real information had been in what the Council members hadn't said. The nervous energy fluctuations when certain topics were mentioned, the careful avoidance of discussing the anomalies that were apparently threatening galactic stability. The Council was afraid of something. something their ancient technologies and established procedures couldn't handle, and they had just made the mistake of cutting off the one species that specialized in finding innovative solutions to impossible problems. Elena looked up at the bunker's ceiling, imagining the stars beyond Earth's atmosphere, scattered across the galaxy in patterns that had remained unchanged for millions of years. But change was coming, whether the Galactic Council wanted it or not. They had tried to contain humanity's potential, but potential, once released, was very difficult to put back in the box. Within 2 years, the galaxy would discover that their most dangerous assumption had been thinking they could control humanity's development by limiting their access to galactic technology. They should have realized that humans had always done their best work when they had to start from scratch and build something better than what already existed. The Council had wanted stability and order. Instead, they were about to get innovation and revolution, and despite the risks and uncertainties ahead, Elena found herself looking forward to showing them exactly what they had rejected when they turned down Earth's application for membership. Humanity had tried to join galactic civilization. Since that wasn't possible, they would simply have to build something better. Council Speaker Zeke felt the familiar weight of failure settling into their consciousness as they reviewed the latest reports from the Deep Survey Division. 2 years had passed since the human rejection, and the galactic situation had deteriorated far beyond anyone's projections. The void storms were no longer isolated incidents but systematic failures in the fabric of space-time itself, and their traditional approaches had proven completely inadequate. The Kepler sector collapse has accelerated, reported Survey Chief Nethvar, their mental projection carrying undertones of barely controlled panic. We're losing approximately 1 star system per standard cycle now. The containment protocols are failing faster than we can implement them. Around the emergency session chamber, the council members floated in their biosuspension pods, their alien forms tense with stress that transcended species boundaries. What had begun as minor spatial anomalies 3 centuries ago had evolved into an existential threat to galactic civilization itself. Status report on the hegemony research initiatives? Zeke inquired, though they already suspected what the answer would be. Council member Veltar's response carried the bitter taste of defeat. Our quantum theorists believe the phenomena may be connected to something called dimensional cascade resonance. However, their mathematical models suggest that stopping the progression would require computational resources exceeding our current capabilities by several orders of magnitude. The synthesis has reached similar conclusions, Quindala added, her telepathic communication unusually strained. Our bioneural network arrays are simply insufficient for the complexity of calculations required to model and counteract these events. Zixthera processed this information with growing dread. The galaxy's most ancient and advanced civilizations, working together with technologies refined over millennia, were admitting defeat against an enemy they couldn't even properly understand. The irony was not lost on them that this crisis was unfolding just 2 years after they had rejected a species for being too innovative and interventionist. What about the restricted sectors? Asked Crexmore, their bone-rattling communication carrying unusual undertones of concern. Any responses from the quarantined species? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Over the past 2 years, 3 minor civilizations within the Council's influence had suffered total system failures when void storms had reached their territories. The established protocols called for evacuation and containment, but the logistics of relocating billions of beings had proven nearly impossible with their existing fleet capabilities. The Yolax Confederation has submitted another request for emergency technological assistance, reported Veltar with obvious reluctance. Their bioscience capabilities are insufficient to maintain their population in temporary shelters beyond another 6 months. Request denied, as per standard protocol, Zixthara replied automatically. But the words felt like ash in their consciousness. How many civilizations would they allow to collapse, rather than risk disrupting the technological restrictions that maintained galactic order? It was at that moment that Chief Monitor Zendara's urgent communication burst through the chamber's carefully maintained calm. Council Speaker, we have a critical situation developing in Restricted Sector 7. Zixthara's attention focused immediately. Sector 7 contained the human territories, along with several other quarantined species considered too unpredictable for full Council membership. Specify the nature of the situation. Multiple unidentified vessels have appeared throughout the sector, moving at velocities that exceed our sensor capabilities. They appear to be intervening in the Draknari system collapse. The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of biosuspension systems. The Draknari were one of the quarantined species, and their home system had been scheduled for evacuation after showing early signs of void storm development. But evacuation of a system containing 12 billion beings required resources the Council couldn't spare from their own crisis management efforts. Define intervening, Veltar demanded. Zendara's response carried overtones of disbelief. The unknown vessels appear to be stabilizing the spatial anomalies. Our monitors show the void storm formation reversing course for the first time in recorded history. Zixthara felt a chill that had nothing to do with their biosuspension environment. Show us. The chamber's central display activated, showing real-time sensor data from the Draknari system. What Zixthara saw there challenged everything they thought they knew about the crisis they had been fighting for centuries. Sleek vessels, unlike anything in the Council's databases, were positioned at precise points throughout the system, each one generating energy signatures that seemed to actively repair the damaged space-time fabric that void storms left behind. But more shocking than the technology was the efficiency. What would have required entire Council fleets working for decades was being accomplished by perhaps 50 ships in a matter of hours. Analysis of the vessels? Quindala inquired, her mental voice tight with implications neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Hull configurations unknown. Propulsion systems operating on principles not found in our databases. Energy output suggests manufacturing techniques at least 2 centuries ahead of any known galactic technology. Zendara reported. However, there is one identifying signature that our xenoanalysis division has been able to confirm. Zixthara already knew what that signature would be, but they asked anyway. Origin species? Human. The silence that followed was profound. Every council member was processing the same impossible conclusion. The species they had quarantined and restricted 2 years ago had somehow developed technology that surpassed the combined capabilities of 12 ancient galactic civilizations. That is impossible, Veltar stated flatly. Our monitoring systems have confirmed continuous compliance with all technological restrictions. Human manufacturing capabilities remain within specified parameters. Their AI development has been limited to approved levels. Their military capabilities show no advancement beyond kinetic projectile systems. And yet, Zendara continued relentlessly. Preliminary analysis suggests these vessels were constructed using self-replicating manufacturing systems of a sophistication that exceeds our current understanding. The materials science alone represents advances we have been attempting to achieve for over 1,000 cycles. Krexmore's communication carried the grinding sound of frustrated confusion. How is such development possible under our monitoring protocols? Perhaps, Quindala suggested with careful mental precision, our monitoring protocols were monitoring the wrong things. Zixthara began to feel a creeping suspicion that would soon become a terrible certainty. Zendara. Compile a complete review of human activities since the restrictions were implemented. Cross-reference with any technological developments that might have appeared to comply with our protocols while actually exceeding them. Already in progress, Council Speaker. Initial findings are concerning. The display shifted to show what appeared to be standard human manufacturing facilities scattered across their 17 systems. To the Council's monitoring sensors, these facilities had been producing exactly what they were supposed to. Basic tools, simple electronics, permitted spacecraft components. Nothing that violated any restrictions. However, Zendara continued, when we analyze the quantum signatures of materials being processed within these facilities, we find evidence of subatomic manipulation at scales that should be impossible with their approved technology. They're transmuting elements, Veltar realized with growing horror. They've been building advanced technologies using disguised manufacturing systems. More than that, Zendara confirmed. Pattern analysis suggests they've created a completely parallel technological infrastructure. Every compliance facility appears to have secondary functions that activate only in response to encrypted quantum communication protocols we cannot decode. Zixthara felt the weight of catastrophic error settling into their consciousness. Estimated scope of actual human technological capabilities? Conservative projections suggest they have achieved effective technological independence, Zendara reported. Optimistic projections suggest they may have achieved technological superiority in multiple critical areas. The chamber's occupants absorbed this information in stunned silence. The restrictions that were supposed to keep humanity contained and controlled had instead motivated them to develop technologies so advanced they could accomplish what the entire Galactic Council could not. There's more, Zendara continued. The vessels assisting the Draknari appear to be using quantum communication systems that operate instantaneously across any distance. If humans have achieved real-time coordination across interstellar space, they've become the first truly unified galactic civilization, Quindala finished, her mental voice carrying undertones of awed respect. While we've been debating jurisdiction and protocol across communication delays of years or decades, they've been operating as a single coordinated entity. The implications are staggering, Veltar admitted. If they can reverse void storm damage, they may be the only force in the galaxy capable of stopping the cascade progression. Zixthara made a decision that went against millennia of Council protocol. Open a communication channel to the human vessels. Council Speaker, Crexmore protested. Such direct contact violates established procedures for dealing with quarantined species. The established procedures, Zixthara replied grimly, have just proven themselves completely inadequate for our current reality. The communication system took several minutes to establish contact, during which Zixthara had time to consider the full scope of their miscalculation. The Council had rejected humanity for being too innovative and interventionist, then imposed restrictions designed to prevent them from becoming a threat to galactic stability. Instead, they had motivated humans to become so advanced that they could single-handedly solve crises that threatened galactic civilization itself. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Assistance Fleet," came the response, and Zixthara realized with a mixture of irony and inevitability that they were speaking with the same person who had stood before them 2 years ago as ambassador. "To whom am I speaking?" "Council Speaker Zixthara, Admiral Chen. Your vessels appear to be operating in violation of established quarantine protocols. With respect, Council Speaker." Chen's voice carried a tone of polite formality that somehow managed to convey complete indifference to Council authority. "The Draknari government requested emergency assistance, and we responded. I'm not aware of any galactic law that prohibits species from helping each other during natural disasters. The technology you're employing exceeds the parameters established in your species' development restrictions." There was a brief pause before Chen responded, and when she did, Zixthara could hear the smile in her voice. "Council Speaker, those restrictions were based on your assessment of appropriate technology for a species of our development level. Since you made it clear that our development level was insufficient for Council membership, we took steps to advance that development. I trust you don't object to our efforts at self-improvement?" The audacity was breathtaking. Humanity had effectively admitted to violating every technological restriction the Council had imposed, while simultaneously positioning themselves as the saviors of a species the Council had been prepared to abandon. "How?" Veltar demanded, abandoning diplomatic protocol in his frustration. "Our monitoring systems confirmed continuous compliance. Your monitoring systems monitored what we allowed them to monitor," Chen replied pleasantly. "You wanted us to limit our AI development, so we created memory-based systems that don't think, they remember. You wanted us to restrict our manufacturing, so we built systems that appear to produce basic goods while actually transmuting materials at the quantum level. You wanted us to accept technological limitations, so we developed technologies you couldn't detect or understand. This level of advancement should have required centuries," Quindala protested. "It would have, if we had followed traditional development patterns," Chen agreed. "But traditional development assumes access to established technologies and gradual improvement over time. When you cut us off from galactic technology, you forced us to innovate from first principles. Turns out, that's much faster than trying to build on other people's foundations." Zixthara realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that had achieved technological transcendence through adversity rather than inheritance. Admiral Chen, the void storm phenomena represent an existential threat to galactic civilization. Our best efforts have proven insufficient to address the crisis. We're aware, Chen replied. We've been monitoring the situation since the restrictions were implemented. The cascade progression follows predictable mathematical models once you understand the underlying quantum mechanics involved. You can stop it? Veltar asked, his voice tight with desperate hope. We can reverse it, Chen corrected. Complete dimensional restoration takes approximately 48 hours per affected system, using our current fleet capabilities. We estimate we can have the entire cascade neutralized within 6 months. The chamber fell silent as council members absorbed this statement. 6 months to solve a crisis that had been threatening galactic civilization for centuries, accomplished by a species they had dismissed as too primitive and unpredictable for membership. What do you require in return? Zixthara asked. Already knowing the answer would fundamentally reshape galactic civilization. Nothing, Chen replied, and Zixthara felt their worldview shift. We're not doing this for the Council's benefit. We're doing it because 12 billion Draknari didn't deserve to die because of political restrictions on emergency assistance. We're doing it because the Yolax Confederation's children shouldn't suffer because Council protocols prioritize jurisdiction over medical aid. We're doing it because someone needs to. But surely you expect some form of recognition, some change in your quarantine status. Council Speaker, Chen interrupted gently. 2 years ago, we came to you seeking membership in your organization. You rejected us and imposed restrictions designed to keep us weak and dependent. Today, we're in a position to save galactic civilization, and we're choosing to do so without conditions or expectations. Zixthara began to understand the full scope of the Council's error. They had seen humanity's interventionist tendencies as a flaw to be corrected, rather than a strength to be valued. They had interpreted human innovation as dangerous unpredictability rather than necessary adaptation. Most critically, they had assumed that technological restrictions could contain a species' potential for growth. What happens now? Quindala asked quietly. Now, Chen replied, humanity continues doing what we've always done, helping where we can, building what we need, and proving that the impossible is just another engineering problem waiting for the right solution. The Council is welcome to observe, but we don't require permission or approval for our actions. The communication ended, leaving the Council chamber in profound silence. Around them, displays continued showing human vessels methodically reversing damage that had been considered irreparable by the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. They're right, Veltar said finally. We created this situation by trying to control their development rather than understanding their potential. The restrictions weren't just ineffective, Quindala added, her mental voice carrying overtones of rueful recognition. They were counterproductive. We forced them to become self-sufficient, which made them more advanced, not less. Crexmore's communication carried the grinding sound of grudging respect. Their technology surpasses ours. Their coordination exceeds ours. Their willingness to act surpasses ours. And their moral courage surpasses ours. What exactly were we trying to protect by keeping them out of the Council? Zixthara already knew the answer, though it was painful to acknowledge. We were protecting our own sense of superiority. We wanted to believe that age and established wisdom were more valuable than innovation and adaptability. We wanted to maintain a galactic order based on ancient hierarchies, rather than actual capability. And now? Veltar asked. Now we watch a species we rejected save the galaxy without asking for anything in return, Zixthara replied. And we try to learn from the biggest mistake in Council history. As reports continued flowing in from across the galaxy of human vessels appearing wherever they were needed most, Zixthara contemplated the irony of their situation. The Council had spent centuries maintaining galactic stability through careful control and established protocols. Humanity had achieved galactic salvation through innovation and moral courage. The species they had deemed too dangerous to join the galactic community had become the galactic community's only hope for survival. The beings they had tried to contain and control had transcended every limitation placed upon them and emerged as the most advanced and capable civilization in known space. The Galactic Council had turned down Earth, believing they were protecting galactic order from an unpredictable and dangerous species. Instead, they had motivated humanity to become everything the galaxy actually needed: innovative, capable, unified, and willing to act when action was required. It was Zixthara reflected as they watched human ships restore another dying star system, probably the most expensive rejection letter in galactic history. And humanity, with characteristic grace and competence, was handling the consequences better than the council that had created them. The final mistake wasn't rejecting Earth's membership application. The final mistake was assuming that rejection would keep humanity from becoming what they were meant to be. Not just members of galactic civilization, but its saviors. And they had done it all, without asking for permission, approval, or recognition. Just as they had warned the council they would, 2 years ago, when Ambassador Sarah Chen had walked out of the crystalline chamber and begun planning humanity's technological revolution. The council had wanted to control humanity's future. Instead, they had ensured that humanity would define the galaxy's future. And despite everything, Zixthara found themselves grateful that they had.